Duncan, British Columbia. It is easy to see why Chris Burkowski, writer, TV producer, media specialist, and UFO researcher from Winnipeg, Manitoba, would include the disappearance of Granger Taylor in his top 11 list of strange UFO reports. Taylor lived in Duncan, British Columbia. He had two passions in life, a love of machinery and an obsession with UFOs. He left school when he finished grade 8 to become a mechanic's apprentice, and quickly earned a reputation as a real whiz when it came to repairing any and every kind of machine that needed fixing. He also loved building replicas of things, such as planes and cars, and rescuing abandoned machines, including an old train locomotive that he pieced back together in the early 1970s, when he was still in his teens. And, in pursuit of his other passion, he built a flying saucer in his parents' backyard. Taylor fashioned the main shell of his spacecraft out of two large satellite dishes, anchored to a base with legs to keep it off the ground. He furnished it much as a kid would a treehouse, even hauling up an old couch and TV so he could spend time there in comfort. When he wasn't working on some piece of machinery, he could usually be found in it, reading and thinking about how a real spaceship might be made to fly. But the morning after a powerful thunderstorm rolled across Vancouver Island in November 1980, no one could find Taylor anywhere. He and his pickup truck had vanished. Taylor did leave behind a note for his parents, telling them he was going to board an alien ship that would take him on a 3.5-year-long voyage to outer space and back. The police investigation that followed his disappearance turned up no clues as to what might have happened to him. After 3.5 years without any news about or from their son, the Taylors feared the worst. But in the faint hope that he would return one day, they left the red and white flying saucer standing in their yard. Cause for concern: Suffield, Alberta. Over the years, concern for the safety of airline passengers has increased. Even before a string of deadly hijackings, both commercial and military pilots had to report any unidentified plane or flying object they saw in the sky or picked up on their radar systems. In the new millennium, doing this has become more important than ever. On March 21st, 2004, the pilot of a Challenger jet flying over Suffield, Alberta, radioed air traffic controllers in Edmonton to say he could see a very bright light falling from the sky, trailing smoke behind it. Two other pilots filed similar reports at about the same time. Later, the pilots and several other people who observed the incredibly bright orb in the early evening sky that Sunday would learn that what they had seen was an asteroid or a chunk of comet burning up as it entered Earth's atmosphere. But when he first spotted the unidentified object not far from his plane, the Challenger's pilot must have felt a brief moment of extra concern for the welfare of his passengers, and rightly so. Security worries are always greater if one has an important world leader on board. And that evening, the pilot was flying Paul Martin, Canada's Prime Minister, to a meeting with farmers near Picture Butte, Alberta. The last thing the pilot needed to worry about during that flight was a UFO. Arctic encounter, Northwest Territories. Apparently, Prime Minister Martin wasn't aware that he'd just had a close encounter with a UFO in March 2004, but Vera Oviac of Northwest Territories was very aware of her much closer encounter 7 years earlier, on February 22nd, 1997. It was early in the morning, and Oviac and her son, Grant, Lena Kotak, and Churchill and Dorothy Wolke were driving a truck along an ice road that links Tuk and Aklavik in the winter. Suddenly, Oviac spotted a large silver-colored shape drifting across the road just above the trees. Then, as a mysterious flying object landed gently near the road, another one appeared out of nowhere and touched down a bit further of the first one. Oviac and the others could see that the craft closer to the truck had 4 large windows, each one lit up with a bright blue glow. Curious, but nervous too, the 5 travelers decided to keep driving, but panic quickly replaced any curiosity they might have felt when the ships rose up and it seemed to start following them. For more than 10 minutes, the blue-lit crafts glided just above the ground behind the truck. Then, as suddenly as the UFOs had appeared, they were gone. Relieved, the Oviacs and their neighbors drove on in silence, each one trying to make sense of what they just had seen.